Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we're going to go ahead and continue our beginner guitar lesson series using the Hal Leonard Guitar Method, Book 1. Let's get started. Alright, so today we're going to go ahead and take a look at page 42 and 43 of the Hal Leonard Beginner Guitar Method Book 1. Before we get started, I will toss out my reminder to head on over and take a look at my Patreon page. Over there you're going to find a lot of great resources to help you out on your journey of learning to play guitar. You can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. It's a wonderful way to give back and say thank you to Nick Tolman Music for the content that you've been receiving here on YouTube, but also the resources there, again, are very helpful and should hopefully be a great asset to you as you are learning to play. So definitely head on over there and consider becoming a patron today. So on page 42 and 43, we're going to learn one new song. There are no new concepts here, nothing fancy. It is just a song, all right? So this is by far the longest piece of music that we have learned in the book so far. It's 2 full pages of music, plus repeats. I mean, it's definitely a full-length piece of music. So we're going to go ahead and play it for you today. I'm going to start by playing it at a slower tempo. We'll play part 1, part 2. We'll talk about these, and then we'll put everything together before playing it at a faster tempo. So let's get started. Here is part 1 at 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, and play. And that's the idea. Okay, so for most of this, there's not that much to talk about. However, there are some tricky little things that might throw you off just a little bit, all right? So starting at the beginning, it's all really straightforward. We're just playing the notes down. F sharp, We do have some little skips there, so maybe just watch out for those. If they're giving you trouble, definitely isolate those and work on them, but they shouldn't be too bad for you at this point in the book. Second line, F sharp. Okay, all straightforward, and then it repeats what happened at the beginning. And then again, this is a repeat of what happened on the second line. Slightly different at the end, but all really straightforward. Really, that first line in part 1 should be no problem for you. Now, moving into the second page, we have, don't forget about the repeat, so you will repeat, play that again, and then we move into the second page. Up here, up to this point, it's all pretty straightforward. Okay, so here's where things get a little funny. It's all in that kind of concept of trying to avoid the one finger jump, right? So when you go in from the second to third measure. Now, what I kind of did the first time around is I just rolled over, and that's totally an option with this third finger. So when you play that last note in the second measure of the second page there, we have D, and then you can just kind of roll over to the G, right? Or you could play the G with your fourth finger, right? Which is totally an option too. The second time when I repeated, I actually played the G with my fourth finger, which also works just fine. So either way, kind of think about what you're going to do going into that first note of the third measure there of this fifth line. So G. Now same thing here. We don't want to do that one finger jump. So for me, the most natural thing is to play the D with my second finger at the end of the third measure. And then just play the F sharp with my first finger. Okay, so there's a lot of little stuff going on there. But let me just do that for you nice and slow up to that last measure. So starting in the second measure of the fifth line. Okay, so now we've played the C sharp with our first finger, and we're going to play open, shift back down to play the second C sharp with our second finger, and then play the A with our first finger, again to avoid another one finger jump. I know that's a lot of little shifts there, but what I would do is just go through and write them in. So let's do that together really quickly. So we're looking at the fifth line of music. It's the top line on the second page. The last note of the second measure, go ahead and just write a little 3 over that. We're just going to play that D with our third finger, just like normal. Then the next note, G, the first note of the third measure, we're going to play with our fourth finger. So go ahead and write a little 4 above it. And then normal fingerings. Okay, so that next G in the third measure, we're going to play with our third finger because we're back to normal fingerings for 3 notes. And then the D, go ahead and write a little 2 above it because that D at the end of the third measure, we're going to play with our second finger. And then the C sharp on the fourth measure, we're going to play with our first finger. Then we have an open B. The next C sharp, we're going to play with our second finger. And then the last note, we're going to play with our first finger. Moving into the next line, that first A is going to just stay with your first finger. And then with the open B, you shift back to just regular first position stuff. Right? And then those next 2 measures are all just straightforward, normal first position fingerings. Okay? So hopefully that helps. Moving into the second line, again, we have... And then the third measure of this second line, I guess it's the 6th line of the music. It's the second line on this page. All right, so that third measure again, we're gonna play that F sharp with our second finger, just like normal. We're gonna play the A with our first finger, because we don't wanna jump, right? So A with our first finger, and then while we're playing that A, we're gonna just sneak that second finger down to play C sharp. So just nice and slow, that third measure of the sixth line of music looks like this. One more time, F sharp, A, C sharp, D. That one's not too challenging, but it is just a little bit of a atypical fingering. And then the rest is pretty straightforward with fingerings. However, those first two measures of the seventh line of music tend to be a little problematic just because of the jumps. So if you need to isolate those two measures and just do them real slow and just repeat, repeat, repeat to get those jumps happening, please do so. And then the last line, all regular fingerings, just playing the notes. All right. So hopefully that helps. Let's go ahead and play part 2, and we'll talk about it a little bit. So here is part 2 at 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready and play. And that is part 2. There are actually no fancy fingerings that need to take place in this entire part. It really is just playing the notes with the standard fingerings that we have learned, right? So a couple little things that you just got to watch out for is just making sure that you're familiar with the key signature. There's a lot of F sharps with our fourth finger throughout the whole thing. So just making sure that all of those Fs, every single F that you play is an F sharp. Okay, and there are also several C sharps that come up as well. So be aware of that. The whole first line, the whole first page is really straightforward, nothing fancy. In the second page, there are a couple places where you can utilize minimizing movement. So for instance, on the third line of the second page, we have this. We play the C, just leave the C down. But that's really basic stuff that we talked about way at the beginning of the book. Just utilize all of those concepts while you're working on part 2, and it really shouldn't give you too much problem. All right, let's go ahead and play the chords and hear what this all sounds like together. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready and play. And that is Minuet in G at 72 on the metronome. Let's go ahead and bump the tempo up and play this at a more realistic tempo and maybe a goal tempo for you to work up to. All right, so let's go ahead and bump the tempo up to 120 on the metronome. I'm gonna go ahead and play part 1, part 2, and then we'll put it all together with the chords so you can hear what these all sound like up to tempo. All right, so here we go. Here's part 1 at 120 on the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, and... right, so that's part 1 at 120 on the metronome. Let's go ahead and add part 2 so you can hear what the two parts sound like together. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, and... And there is part 1 and 2 together at 120 on the metronome. Let's go ahead and add the chords, and we'll have all 3 parts together so you can see what it all sounds like together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, and... And there it is. Thank you so much for tuning into our lesson today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or otherwise, please leave those in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer those for you. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and we will see you at our next guitar lesson. Thanks.